All right. Hey, everybody. If you missed class, there's an assignment under Google Classroom. Go to classwork, and then you'll see it. And it says multiplication and division equations, practice B. So that's just additional practice. We've only had one prior lesson on this topic, so we're kind of circling back and making sure we get some more work with it. So if you open that up and look at the first page is a warm-up. I'd like you to pause this video and try out those 4 questions. All right, so hopefully you tried out those 4 questions. Now let's take a look at the answers for them. So which expression shows the product of 3 and x? You're going to circle which one it is. Remember that product means multiply. And so which one of these are being multiplied? Well, that's addition. This one is division, when it looks like a fraction. Subtraction. This one right here. When they're being glued together. Remember, they're glued together. It's like they're happily married. Congratulations. Now the second one, the inverse. Remember, inverse means opposite. So what's the inverse of plus 5? Minus 5. You can think about it like, what's the opposite of giving someone $5? Taking $5 or spending $5. What's the inverse of minus 7? Plus 7. And check your answers out too and make sure you got them. If not, go ahead and fix them. What is the inverse of divide by 9 times 9? You can also write it like this. And lastly, what's the inverse of times 8? Divided by 8. All right, let's move on. We have 2 more. So let's look at this equation. Y plus 16 equals 48. What's happening to the variable y? So look next to y. What's next to it? Plus 16. So that's what's happening to y. So whatever value y is, it just has 16 being added. What is the inverse or the opposite? Subtracting 16. So when I get to this problem here, notice I used the same equation. We're actually going to use this inverse operation to solve this equation and isolate the variable y. So let's look at this. It's plus 16. We know our inverse is minus 16. Am I done? Nope, I need to make sure I do it on both sides. And we do this because we need to balance the equation. Again, think about it like a seesaw. If you have one person get off the seesaw on one side, then you've got to take some weight off the other side too, otherwise it'll be unbalanced. So I still have my y here. And if I have 16 minus 16, what is that? It's just 0. Some people like to put a little line through that to remind them that they kind of cancel each other out to 0. That's a personal choice. And then in the end, after the equal sign, we just subtract. 8 minus 6, 2. 4 minus 1, 3. So I know that y plus 0 or plus nothing is 32. I can simplify that. I know then that the value of y, just by itself without the 0, has to be 32. All right, check them out. See how you did. This was an extra fun thing. All right, so you've completed your warm-up. We're going to do some practice with multiplication and division one-step equations. If you have time, you can do the little applet. You can click on here. That's the one where it's like that mini game where you're walking around using the arrows and the space bar to pick things up, put things down. It shows you an actual scale. And then you have some choice. I would recommend this one if you want to practice. I would practice Z8 under 6th grade. All right, but let's focus on the main assignment here, classwork practice B. And I put a little reminder at the top that these two are inverses of each other. Multiplication and division. Keep in mind that multiplication dot, that is what it stands for. And we use that because now that we're using variables, it might be confusing if I were to use an X as a time symbol. So let's take a look at level 1. In this first problem, 6m equals 36. 6 and m are glued together. Remember, it's like they're married. Married and multiply both start with m, so it's easy to remember. So they're multiplied right now. I want to think, what's the opposite of multiply by 6? Yeah, the opposite is divide by 6. Another way people remember it is they're married, but they have problems, math problems, obviously, and so they're divorcing or dividing. Again, those both start with D. And if I divide one side by 6, I also need to divide the other side by 6. I'm going to switch back to the color black. All right. So looking back at the left side, what is 6 divided by 6? It's 1. So that just becomes 1m. And I put that big old 1 to remind myself these cancel to just 1, or divide to just 1. And the other side, 36 divided by 6. That equals 6. Can I simplify this? This just means 1 times a number equals 6. What would the number have to be? It would have to be 6. So that's why m equals 6 is the same as 1m equals 6. When there's no number in front of it, or coefficient it's called, it's implied that there's a 1 there. Let's go ahead and try the second one on the gray side. Now this one looks like a fraction. R divided by 3 equals 6. Remember when it looks like a fraction? It means division, and its inverse is multiplication. So when this says divide by 3 underneath the variable r, what's the opposite of divide by 3? Times 3. And anything I do to one side, I need to do to the other side of the equation to balance it. Now these two 3's here, it's kind of funky, but they're actually going to, again, just end up being 1r. And that happens because if I were to write it out, now if this part's confusing, don't worry about it. But if I were to multiply 3 by r over 3, because the right side looks like a fraction, I'd want to make this side look like a fraction. And then I'd multiply them. 3 times r is just 3r. And 1 times 3 is just 3. And then I could simplify this. 3 divided by 3 again becomes 1. So that would just leave it 1r. And so if this part here, I'm going to put a little bubble around it. If that's a little bit confusing, don't worry about it for right now. As long as you remember that these are going to end up being 1. And I like to make that sideways 1 through it to remind me of that. So we have 1r on the left side, and the other side, 6 times 3. 6 times 3 is 18. So now we can simplify that to the value of r equals 18. So each of these levels are really just doing the same thing. The only difference is the numbers just get a little bit bigger. And that's because I want you to say, well, in the first problem, 6 times the number is 36. You probably already know the answer is going to be 6. But it's how do you show your work? We want to build these good habits now because that's, how you're expected to write your work in math class. And that's not just 6th grade. That's, 7th grade, high school, even in college. This is how they expect you to show your work. So we're building those habits early on to make sure you understand how they expect you to show your work. All right, let's look at this one and just help you set it up, and then you're going to try them on your own. So let's look at this one. 8w equals 32. Remember when they're squished together like that? The happy couple? So they're being multiplied, married, multiplied. And the opposite of multiply by 8, you always want to look at what's happening between the number and the variable, is divide by 8. you can look right above just in case you forget. So you're going to divide by 8 on both sides. And then do your same steps. Think about it. 8 divided by 8 equals 32 divided by 8 equals, and then you have your value for W. On the other side, F divided by 2 is 12. Think, what's happening to F? It's being divided by 2. So the inverse would be times 2. And again, think about what happens to the 2's on the left side. Think about what they end up becoming. So there are a couple levels here. Level 2, level 3, and level 4. So those are the ones you're going to complete. I wouldn't worry so much about down here unless you just have extra time and want to do those. But I'd like you to finish at least until level 4, the ones I put the stars on. So when you're finished with this, please hit submit or turn in at the top right. Mine says save, but yours says turn in here. You'll click turn in, then you click turn in one more time. All right, thanks for listening. Bye, guys.